Get your hands off that and get off my property. Ma'am, this equipment is out of compliance. It goes on the curb. That mat is mine. I bought it. You are standing in a building I hold the lease on. Held, past tense. Tucker Hale flipped a page on his clipboard without looking up. As of Tuesday, the warm-up floor reverts to the city, and the city leased it to us. So, this is our compliance problem now, sweetheart. There are 12 children behind me who have been getting up at 5 in the morning for 6 months. Then somebody should have read their paperwork. He turned around to the 15 men in matching red warm-ups behind him. Start with the heavy bags. Everything goes to the pavement. Do not touch my equipment in front of these kids. Tucker Hale put his hand flat on Jordan Mosley's shoulder and moved her out of her own doorway. Nobody wants you here, sweetheart, he said. Not the city, not the league, nobody. Jordan Mosley did not move her feet again. Tucker Hale did not know he was throwing the mats of a woman who had personally trained 4 of the 16 boxers on the United States Olympic Reserve roster onto the pavement. Before we find out who this woman really was, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel because tomorrow's story is one you are not going to want to miss. At 10 minutes to 6 that Saturday morning, Jordan Mosley unlocked the side door of a converted auto shop on the corner of Delaney and 12th in Gary, Indiana. The lock stuck in cold weather. She had never fixed it. She hit it with the heel of her hand twice, the way her mother used to, and it gave. Inside, the building smelled like canvas and floor cleaner and old rubber, 6 heavy bags. 1 ring she had built herself, out of parts bought at a school district auction. A pull-up bar bolted into a beam that had held a car lift in 1961. Above the front door, outside, there was a sign. It was small, and it was faded almost past reading, and it said, Josie Mosley's Gym. That had been the name of the gym in this building for 19 years before it closed. Everybody over 30 on Delaney Street remembered it. Nobody under 30 had ever asked, and Jordan had never once brought it up. She was 29 years old, and she had learned to skip rope on this floor at the age of 6. She turned on the lights 1 bank at a time. Then she started the coffee, because Billy would want coffee, and then she walked the floor and checked every mat seam with the toe of her shoe. Today was the day. 6 months of 5 o'clock mornings came down to 1 card in 1 gym, in front of 1 set of judges. Billy Odell came in at 20 past 6 with a folding table under 1 arm. Chairs are still in the back. I know where the chairs are, baby. Wilhelmina Odell was 58 years old and had worked the desk at Riverbend Boxing since the week it opened. She was not paid. She had tried to be paid twice, and Jordan had lost both arguments. She had also worked that same desk 20 years earlier, when the building had a different name over the door and a different woman running it. And she had raised her sister's grandson since he was 6, which was why the tallest fighter on the card that morning called her Aunt Billy in front of everybody and did not care who heard it. How many families you expecting? 40, maybe 50. Jordan pulled the first stack of chairs off the wall. Everybody's people are coming. Marcus been up since 4. Marcus has been up since 4 every day this week. Marcus Odell came through the door at 6:30, with his hood up and his gloves already on. He was 17 years old, 6'1", and he had a way of coming into a room like he was apologizing for the space he took up. Coach, raps. I did them at home. Then show me. She held out her hand. He gave her his wrists 1 at a time, and she checked them and undid the left one and did it again herself. You want to feel your knuckles tomorrow? Do it like that. By 7, the room was filling. Tasha Greaves came in at 14 years old with her father, who worked nights and had traded a shift to be there. Elias Booth came at 16 with his mother, Renee, who had brought a folding chair from her own kitchen because she did not trust gym chairs. 12 fighters, 12 names on the card. Jordan had filed the entry with the state commission 6 weeks earlier and had read the confirmation email 11 times. At 7:15, a man came in through the front and stood by the door for a moment. He was in his 50s, gray windbreaker, tablet under his arm. He did not talk to anybody. He found the folding chair nearest the wall, sat down in it, and started making notes. Billy leaned over the desk. "Who's that?" "No idea." "He's writing." "Let him write." Jordan had applied for full sanctioned club status a month earlier. The commission had told her an inspector would visit within 60 days. Unannounced. She would not be told when. She had assumed it would be a weekday. She had assumed a lot of things that morning. At 20 minutes to 8, the whole room heard it at the same time. Engines, not one. A line of them, coming down Delaney and turning into the lot. And then a second line behind that. Renee Booth got up and went to the window. "Jordan," she said, "honey, come look at this." 4 white vans with a red crest on the door were parked across the front of the lot. And out of them, in matching warm-ups, came 15 men. Jordan Mosley went out the front door and let it close behind her. "Morning." The man in front was 38, thick through the neck, with a clipboard he did not need, and sunglasses pushed up on his head. She had met him twice. Tucker Hale, head coach, Ironclad Athletic Club, the glass building that had gone up across the road 3 months ago. "Coach Mosley?" He smiled. "You're going to want to see this." He handed her 1 page. Jordan read it, standing in her own parking lot, with 50 people watching through the window behind her. It was a municipal lease transfer, the north bay of her building. 2,000 square feet where every one of her kids stretched and jumped rope before they ever touched a bag. The city of Gary had leased it to a limited liability company she had never heard of. Signed 11 days ago. Countersigned by a city councilman named Reed Bosworth. "That bay is part of my building. That bay is city inventory. It always was." Hale took the page back out of her hand. "You've been using it on a handshake for 3 years. Handshakes end. Who is Fairwater Holdings?" "Above my pay grade. Mr. Hale, there are 12 kids in there on today's card. Half of them warm up in that bay because there is nowhere else in this building to do it." She kept her voice flat. "You knew that when you scheduled this for 8 in the morning on card day. I schedule what I'm told to schedule. Then tell whoever tells you that Indiana code requires 14 days written notice to a tenant in possession before removal of property, not 11, not a page in a parking lot." Something moved behind Tucker Hale's face. He had not expected her to have a number in her mouth. "You a lawyer now too, coach?" "I read my own paperwork." He turned around to his men. "Warm-up bay. Everything that isn't bolted down goes to the curb." They came past her on both sides. 15 men in matching red walked into Riverbend boxing. 2 of their own held the door. They did not run and they did not shout. That was the part Renee Booth would talk about for the rest of her life. They were pleasant about it. Jordan came in behind them and put herself in the doorway of the North Bay. "Coach!" Marcus was at her shoulder. "Coach, what do we do?" "You sit down, all of you, chairs against the wall." She did not turn around. "Nobody puts a hand on anybody. Nobody says one word. Do you hear me? Not one word out of any of you." 12 kids sat down against the wall. The mats went first. They were 4x8 interlocking panels, blue. Jordan had bought them used from a wrestling program in Hammond. She drove them home herself in a borrowed truck. 2 men to a panel. Out the door, down the step, onto the pavement. Then the jump ropes. Then the medicine balls, which rolled. Then the rack of hand weights, dragged across the floor because nobody bothered to lift it. The man in the gray windbreaker stood up from his chair by the wall. "Excuse me," he said. "What's the legal basis for the removal?" Tucker Hale looked at a middle-aged man in a windbreaker holding a tablet. "City lease?" A lease conveys a right of possession. It doesn't authorize a private party to remove another party's personal property. Who executed the notice? "Sir, are you with her?" "I'm asking a question." "Then here's your answer." Hale was already turning away. "Sit down and mind your business, or you can wait outside with the rest of them." The man in the gray windbreaker sat down. He did not say anything else. He opened his tablet, and he started typing, and he did not stop typing for the next 40 minutes. Renee Booth took her phone out of her purse and held it against the back of the folding chair in front of her and started recording. Jordan Mosley stood in the doorway of the North Bay while two men carried her mats past her. She did not raise her voice one time. When the second panel came past, she reached out and took the near end of it, and the man holding it stopped because he had not expected weight. "That one stays." "Ma'am, I bought it in 2023 for $310. I have the receipt in that desk. That one stays." He looked over at Hale. Hale shrugged. Jordan carried the mat back into her own gym by herself, laid it down flat in the middle of the floor, and squared it with her foot. Then she went back to the doorway and stood there for the rest of it. Outside, on the corner of Delaney and 12th, on a Saturday morning, in front of 40 parents and 12 children, her equipment came out one piece at a time and went into a pile. Marcus Odell sat against the wall with his gloves on and his jaw set and did exactly what she told him. At 3 minutes past 8, a black SUV pulled into the lot and parked across two spaces. Declan March took his time getting out. He was 45, silver at the temples, in a quarter zip with the ironclad crest stitched small over the heart. He looked at the pile on the pavement the way a man looks at a delivery that arrived on schedule. Then he came up the step into a room of 40 people and put his hand out. "Coach Mosley." Jordan did not take it. "3 months ago, you offered me $200,000 for this building." "I did. Then $250, then $300 in April in writing." She was still in the doorway of the North Bay. "And when I said no the third time, a company nobody has ever heard of leased my warm-up floor out from under me 11 days ago. Fairwater is a development partner." He said it easily. "They hold a lot of paper in this corridor. That isn't a conspiracy. That's a Tuesday. Mr. March, there is a boy sitting against that wall who is fighting his last junior card today. And he can fight it." Declan March turned and raised his voice slightly, so it carried to the parents. "Nobody is canceling anything. The card goes forward at 11 at Ironclad, in a sanctioned facility with a medical suite and an ambulance bay. That's a better room than this one, and every parent here knows it." Nobody answered him. "What I can't do," he said, "is let children warm up on a floor that fails inspection. That's not spite. That's liability." "You wrote the inspection," Jordan said. "I bought a lease." "You bought a councilman." The room went very quiet. Declan March smiled at her with what looked from a distance like patience. "Let me say something, and then I'll go." He did not say it to her. He turned and said it to the parents with his chin up, the way a man says a line he has said before and likes the sound of. "She has 12 kids and 6 bags and a ring she welded herself. I have 11 facilities. I'm not the villain here. I'm the only reason anybody in this zip code will be boxing at all in 5 years." He waited. 40 people looked back at him. Not one person nodded. "Get out of my gym." "It isn't your bay." He walked out. Tucker Hale came past her last, with the final crate of hand wraps under his arm, and he stopped in the doorway. "You want to know what your problem is, Coach?" "No." "Nobody wants you here, sweetheart." He set the crate down on the step, outside, in the wet. "Not the city, not the league, nobody. 3 years, and you can't even get sanctioned. Ask yourself why." He put his hand flat on her shoulder and moved her, the way you move a chair, and walked out into the lot. Jordan Mosley kept her feet. She straightened her sleeve once. She stood exactly where he had put her. Behind her, 12 children sat against a wall in a gym with one blue mat in the middle of an empty floor. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Tasha Greaves, who was 14, started crying without making any noise about it, and her father put his hand on the back of her neck. Jordan turned around. "Everybody up." They looked at her. "I said up. Chairs back against the wall, and let's go." She pulled her whistle out of her collar. "We've got one mat, and we've got a floor. Warm-ups in pairs. Marcus, Elias, you two start. Tasha, you're with me." Renee Booth lowered her phone and looked at the woman standing in the middle of an emptied-out room with a whistle in her hand. "Coach," Marcus said. They took the ropes. "Then you jump without them. It's the same jump. They warmed up for 22 minutes on one blue mat and a concrete floor, while their equipment sat in a pile in the parking lot, getting rained on. The man in the gray windbreaker never left his chair, and he never stopped typing. At 20 minutes to 9, Declan March sat in his SUV in the lot of Ironclad Athletic Club, 400 feet away, and made 2 phone calls. The first was to the city permits office. He filed a formal complaint alleging fire code violations at 1200 Delaney Street, obstructed egress, unpermitted assembly occupancy, materials stored against an exit. He described a pile of mats and equipment sitting in front of the building. That part was true. His own people had put it there 90 minutes earlier. The second call was to the insurance broker, who had bound coverage for the joint card. At 8:52, the certificate of insurance covering all bouts scheduled for that Saturday was withdrawn. Without a certificate, no sanctioned bout could be held anywhere by anyone. Declan March put his phone in the cup holder and sat and watched the corner of Delaney and 12th through his windshield. He had never intended to hold that card at all. The man in the gray windbreaker came up to the desk at 9 o'clock. "Ma'am, are you the record keeper here?" Billy Odell looked at him over her glasses. "I'm the everything here. I'm going to need the club's file." He put a laminated card on the desk. It said, Indiana State Boxing Commission, Office of Sanctioning and Compliance, and under that, Ellis Farrow. Lease documents, insurance certificate, medical clearances, and every piece of correspondence this club has had with any outside party in the last 12 months. Billy read the card twice. "You're the inspector." "I'm the inspector. You've been sitting in that chair since 7:15. "I have." Jordan came across the floor with her whistle still in her hand. Farrow did not apologize and did not explain himself, and she respected that more than she expected to. "You watched all of it." "I did. I want the file." Billy went into the back and came out with a green accordion folder, the kind with a string tie, and she set it on the desk and pulled the string. "Everything's in here." "Everything?" "Baby, I've been running this desk 3 years, and I don't throw away paper." Ellis Farrow opened the folder and took out the first thing his hand touched. It was a letter on Ironclad Athletic Club stationery, dated the 14th of February, offering $200,000 for the property at 1200 Delaney Street. Signed by Declan March. He set it on the desk. He took out the next one. The second was dated the 9th of March, $250,000. The third was dated the 11th of April, $300,000. And this one had a paragraph the first 2 did not. Farrow read it out loud, quietly, because he wanted to hear how it sounded. It said the offer would be reduced if the property's operating status changed, and that Mr. March wished to make clear he was in a position to be aware of such changes in advance. Ellis Farrow put the third letter down flat and looked at it for a while. "Ma'am," he said, "did you ever show this to anyone?" "I showed it to my lawyer's answering machine," Jordan said. "Twice. He never called back. I couldn't pay him anyway." "Is there a fourth?" "There's no fourth. In April, I stopped answering. And in May, the city leased your warm-up bay to Fairwater Holdings." Farrow was already typing. 11 days ago. "Yes?" "Coach Mosley, I want to be precise with you because I'm going to write this down and it's going to matter." He looked up. "Did anyone from the city notify you of that lease before this morning?" "No." "Did anyone from the city inspect this building in the last 12 months?" "Nobody has inspected this building since I signed for it." Farrow wrote that down too. At 9:20, Billy's phone rang at the desk. She listened for about 11 seconds and then held the receiver against her shoulder. "Jordan, it's the commission office." "Which one?" "About registration." Jordan took it. The woman on the other end was polite and sounded tired. The certificate of insurance for the day's card had been withdrawn at 8:52 that morning. Under commission rules, a card without a bound certificate could not proceed at any venue. So, the card's canceled. "The card is canceled, ma'am. All of it. Both clubs." "Both clubs?" "Yes, ma'am." Jordan stood at the desk with the phone in her hand and did the arithmetic in about a second and a half. Declan March had 11 facilities and a card every month. She had one card a year. It had taken her 6 months to fill it. It was the only sanctioned card within 40 miles that took entries from unaffiliated clubs. "Ma'am, I have to ask you to re-register your fighters for the fall card." "When's the fall card?" "November 14th. "My fighters can't wait until November." "I understand, ma'am." "No," Jordan said. "I don't think you do." She hung up. Behind her, on one blue mat in the middle of an empty floor, 12 kids were still going, 2 at a time, because nobody had told them to stop. Outside in the parking lot, in the rain, Renee Booth stood next to a pile of somebody else's equipment and pulled up the video she had recorded 40 minutes earlier. It was 2 minutes and 11 seconds long. It had Hale's voice on it clean, and it had the mats going out the door, and it had 12 children sitting against a wall. Renee had 4 people in the world she wanted to send it to, and none of them mattered, so she sent it to the only group chat she had ever been added to that felt bigger than her life. It was called Riverbend Families. It had 91 people in it, and it had been made by a woman who used to stop by the gym on Sundays before she moved away. Renee typed 4 words under the video. "Look what they did." Jordan Mosley told them at 9:30, because she was not going to let them find out on somebody's phone. She had them sit on the one blue mat. She stood in front of them with her hands at her sides and did not soften it. "The card is canceled. Not moved, canceled. Both clubs, all bouts, today." Nobody said anything. The insurance for the day got pulled at 8:52 this morning. Without it, nobody in this state can put anybody in a ring. She let that land. The next sanction card that takes entries from a club like ours is November 14th. Elias Boothie put his head down between his knees. Tasha Greaves said, "That's 5 months. 5 months and change. Coach, I made weight." Tasha was 14, and she said it like she was defending herself. "I made weight 3 times. I haven't had a real meal since Wednesday." "I know. My daddy switched his shift." "I know he did, baby." Denzel Ware was 15. He had the best jab in the room and had never once been out of Gary. He asked if they could go over to Ironclad and fight there anyway. Jordan had to explain it twice. There was no legal ring anywhere in Indiana that day. Marcus Odell did not say anything at all. He sat at the back of the mat with his gloves still on. He looked at the floor between his feet. Jordan watched him do the math she had already done at the desk 20 minutes earlier. Marcus was 17 years and 9 months old. The junior division ran to 18. On the 14th of November, he would be 18 years and 2 months. And he would be in the open division, and the open division in that state meant men who had been fighting since before he was born. There was no bridge, and there was no waiver. There was a birthday. 6 months of 5 o'clock mornings had been for one card. The card was the door. The door closed at 8:52 that morning while he sat against a wall with his gloves on, doing exactly what his coach told him. "Marcus, I'm good, coach. Look at me." He looked up, and his eyes were red, and his jaw was set so hard she could see the muscle moving. "I did what you said." His voice cracked in the middle, and he kept going anyway. "You said sit down and don't say nothing, so I sat down. I sat there and watched a man put his hand on you, and I sat there. Marcus, was I supposed to just sit there?" "Yes," Jordan said, "and I need you to understand why, and I need you to understand it today, because you're not going to understand it for about 10 years otherwise." She crouched down in front of him on the mat. "If you stand up this morning, this stops being a story about a man taking equipment from children. It becomes a story about a big kid from Delaney Street who put his hands on a coach." She held his eyes. "That's not a maybe. That's the story they'd write, and they'd write it in one afternoon, and you would carry it your whole life. Every single one of them was hoping you'd stand up. So they get to do it. Today, yes. And I lose my last card." Jordan Mosley did not have anything to say to that, and she did not insult him by inventing something. "Yeah," she said, "you do. Here is the thing nobody says out loud about a room like that one. Everybody understands losing. What breaks people is being told to be dignified about it. Sit down. Don't say anything. Don't give them a reason. 12 kids on that mat had heard some version of that instruction their whole lives, from mothers and grandmothers and coaches who loved them. Every one of those adults had been right. The kids had still learned the same lesson underneath it, that when it happens to you, the correct thing to do is nothing, and the reward for doing the correct thing is that it happens again. Jordan had spent 3 years trying to teach them something else. That morning, 15 men in matching warm-ups taught them the older lesson in 90 minutes, in front of their parents, for free. By 10 o'clock, the gym had emptied out. Parents took their kids home. A few of them stopped at the desk and said something to Billy on the way out. And Billy said, "Thank you to every one of them." Tasha's father shook Jordan's hand and could not look at her. Renee Booth stayed and helped drag the wet mats into the North Bay, and neither woman said one word while they did it. At 10:40, Jordan sat down on the edge of her own ring in an empty building. Ellis Farrow had gone out to his car to make a call. Billy was in the back. For about 4 minutes, there was nobody in that room but her. Jordan Mosley put her hands on her knees and found out they were shaking, not from fear. She had been hit in the head professionally for money, and fear did not do this. It was something further down and much worse, and it had a name, and the name was arithmetic. 3 years, $14,000 of her own savings into a ring and 6 bags. 11 months of Sundays spent rewiring a building alone because an electrician cost $400 a day. Her hands were not what they used to be, and the left one had never been right since Osaka, and she had spent the last 3 years holding pads with it anyway, 4 hours a night, for 12 kids whose parents paid nothing. And in 90 minutes on a Saturday morning, a man in a quarter zip had taken all of it apart with 2 phone calls in front of every person she had ever asked to trust her. There were 4 women alive who would have picked up the phone on the first ring. She had trained all 4 of them. She knew every one of their numbers by heart, and she had known them for years. She had never called, not once, in 3 years. She told herself it was because they were busy. That was a lie, and she had always known it was a lie. The truth was that the day she called one of them, she stopped being the person who taught them and became a woman in Gary asking for a favor. She had built this whole gym out of not being that woman. She had built it out of a sign over the door that nobody could read anymore. Jordan sat on the edge of her ring in an empty building and let her hands shake for 4 minutes. Then Billy came out of the back and she stopped. 60 miles north, in a car in the parking lot of a training center in Chicago, a 26-year-old woman named Deja Okafor was scrolling with her thumb before practice. She stopped on a 2-minute video posted in a group chat she had not opened in 4 months. She watched 11 seconds of it. Then she started it over and watched all of it. Then she got out of the car and stood in the rain. She called Renata Cruz. Renata did not pick up. She called her again. The fire marshal arrived at 11 o'clock. His name was on a card and he did not want to be there, and he said so twice in the first minute. "Ma'am, I got a same-day complaint routed through the permits office. Obstructed egress and unpermitted assembly. I have to walk it." "Walk it," Jordan said. He walked it. It took him 19 minutes. He wrote up 2 items, and one of them was a stack of wet mats piled against the north exit, which had been in the middle of her floor until Tucker Hale's men carried it out there at 8:15 that morning. "That's an exit obstruction. I have to cite it. Those mats were inside this building 3 hours ago. I believe you." He was writing. "I can't cite what I believe. I cite what I see." Riverbend Boxing was ordered closed to public assembly pending correction. No card, no spectators, no classes with parents in the building. Correction required a reinspection, and reinspection took 7 to 10 business days. He handed her the yellow copy and looked at the floor when he did it. "For what it's worth, ma'am, this complaint came in at 8:40 this morning. Somebody filed it before I ever saw the mats." Ellis Farrow was standing at the desk with his tablet when the marshal left. "Coach Mosley, what time did they carry the mats out that door?" 8:15, give or take. And the complaint alleging obstruction at that door was filed at 8:40. Farrow said it without any particular emphasis. 25 minutes. He typed for a while. Then he said, "I want to ask you about your sign." Jordan looked up. "The one over the front door, Josie Mosley's gym." He turned the tablet around. "When I pulled your club file this morning, the property came back with an encumbrance I didn't expect. There's a registered mark attached to this address. It's held by the Commission's own licensing archive, and it's been there since 2014. That was my mother's. She ran this building for 19 years. I grew up on that floor." "That's not what I'm asking." Farrow put the tablet flat on the desk between them. "Coach, the mark is registered to a licensed professional under the name Josie Mosley. The license number attached to it is active. It's been renewed every year for 11 years, including this one, and it was renewed 40 days ago from an IP address in Gary, Indiana." Billy Odell stopped moving behind the desk. "Ma'am," Farrow said, "who renews that license every year?" Jordan Mosley did not say anything for about 3 seconds. "I do." "Why?" "Because it costs $65 and because it's her name." "That is not a hobby registration." Farrow tapped the screen once. "It carries the competition record attached to the license. I have not opened it. I'm asking you to tell me instead." Behind him, at the desk, Billy said very quietly, "Baby, tell the man." 51-2, Jordan said. "Lightweight, world title in 2019, defended twice. I retired at 24 in Osaka, and I retired because of my left hand, and I never fought under Mosley in the ring. I fought as Josie. It was hers first." The room stayed quiet. "Nobody here knows," she said. "Not the kids, not the parents, not him across the road." She nodded at the window. "And I would like to keep it that way because the day these kids find out, this stops being their gym and starts being a story about me." Ellis Farrow looked at her for a long moment. "Coach," he said, "I have been doing this work for 22 years. I want you to hear me carefully. There is no version of today where that stays quiet." He picked up the tablet. "Now sit down, because I spent the last hour on something else, and you need to see it before anybody else does." He opened the county recorder's database and turned the screen toward her. "Fairwater Holdings," he said. "The company that took your warm-up bay 11 days ago. I ran every property they hold in this city. There were 9. They were not scattered." Farrow pulled up the parcel map. They came up as a shape, and the shape was the block. Delaney and 12th, Delaney and 13th, the whole east frontage down to the vacant lot behind the church. "That's the tire shop," Jordan said. She put her finger on the screen. "Ray Tolliver, he sold in October. He told everybody he was retiring." "He sold for $110,000, Farrow said. "The county assessed it at $380. "That's the laundromat, Miss Cheryl. Sold in January, $95,000, assessed at $240. Jordan went down the map with her finger and named 7 of the 9 out loud. She knew every one of those doors. She had grown up walking past them. "All 9 sold in the last 14 months, Farrow said. "All 9 at 25 to 40% of assessed value. And in every case, within 60 days before the sale, there was a city action against the property, a code complaint, a permit revocation, a lease pulled. Everyone? Everyone. And every one of those city actions was signed by the same councilman who signed your bay over 11 days ago." Jordan Mosley sat and looked at a map of her own block. "He didn't want my building," she said. "No, ma'am. He wanted the corner. Your building is the corner." Farrow closed the tablet. "You were not first, Coach. You were 9th. The only reason today looked like this is that the other 8 didn't have 40 people standing in the room when it happened to them." Deja Okafor watched the video 4 times in the parking lot of a training center in Chicago. She was 26 years old and the reigning Olympic champion at welterweight. She had spent 7 years of her childhood in a gym on the corner of Delaney and 12th, learning how to breathe. Back then, the sign over the door was new, and the woman who ran it was Josie Mosley, and the teenager holding the pads was Josie's daughter. The 4th time through, she stopped it at 11 seconds and held the screen up close. A man in a red warm-up had his hand flat on Jordan Mosley's shoulder. Renata Cruz picked up on the second call. Deja, I've got weigh-ins. Open the chat. What chat? Riverbend Families, the video. Open it now and don't talk to me while you watch it. There was a long silence on the line. Renata Cruz was 24 years old. She had taken silver in Paris at featherweight. She had walked into the same building at 11 years old with a broken nose her stepfather gave her, and a 16-year-old named Jordan had taped it and put her on the bag. Who is that man? I don't know yet. Where is Coach? She's standing right there, Renata. Look at her. She's just standing there letting them do it. Why would she let them? Because there are 12 kids sitting against the wall behind her. Deja was already walking to her car. That's why. Look at the wall. Renata Cruz was quiet for a second. I'm 3 hours out, she said. I'll call Simone. Simone Falk was 27 and captained the Olympic Reserve program. She did not watch the video before she got in her car. Renata told her one sentence over the phone, and that was enough. The sentence was, somebody put their hands on Coach. Simone Falk made 2 calls from the road, and neither of them was to Jordan Mosley. The first was to a woman named Priya Rahman, who ran the State Commission's compliance desk and who had signed Simone's amateur book when she was 13 years old. The second was to a sports desk producer at a Chicago station who had been asking Simone for an on-camera sit-down for 8 months and had been told no 8 times. You still want it? Are you serious? I'll give you 20 minutes on camera, not in a studio. Simone was doing 80 on the interstate. There's a gym in Gary. Bring 1 camera and 1 person and be there by 2 o'clock. 400 feet from that gym, Declan March was having a productive morning. The permits office had done exactly what he expected. The insurance broker had done exactly what he expected. By 11:40, he had a signed fire order taped to the front glass at 1200 Delaney Street, a canceled card, and a woman with no mats and no way to hold an event for 10 business days. He called Reed Bosworth from his office on the 2nd floor of Ironclad. It's done. Declan? The councilman sounded like a man eating lunch. I told you to let it sit until the fall. It couldn't sit until the fall. The coroner closes the parcel, and the parcel goes to the state in 90 days. There were people in that building. There are always people in the building. That's why we do it on a Saturday, so it's over before Monday. March turned his chair to the window. Reed, she's a 29-year-old with a whistle. She has no lawyer. She has no money. On Monday, she takes the 300 and she thanks us for it. And the man with the tablet? March paused. What man with the tablet? Tucker said there was a man sitting by the wall asking about legal basis. Bosworth had stopped eating. He said he told him to sit down. Then he sat down. Declan? Reed, if a lawyer walks into that building, I will hear about it on Monday from a lawyer in writing, like a normal person. March was already looking at something else on his desk. Nobody drives to Gary on a Saturday. He would repeat that sentence to himself 3 hours later in a parking lot, and it would not sound the same. Back across the road, in a building with a yellow order taped to the glass, Jordan Mosley was on her hands and knees. She was pulling wet mats away from the north exit, because the fire marshal had told her to. Billy came out with a mop. You need to stop and eat something. I need this door clear before he comes back. He comes back in 7 days, baby. Then it'll be clear for 7 days. Ellis Farrow was still at the desk. He had been on the phone for 40 minutes with 2 different people, and at 11:50 he hung up and came over and crouched down beside her on the floor. Coach, I've asked for an emergency compliance review. Meaning what? Meaning 3 commissioners instead of 1, on site, today. He looked at the yellow paper on the glass. I don't have the authority to reverse a city fire order. I want to be honest with you about that. What I do have is the authority to open a sanctioning investigation into a licensed club and a licensed coach. Ironclad is both. Today's Saturday. It is. Nobody's come in today, Mr. Farrow. Ellis Farrow stood up and brushed off his knees. Ma'am, he said, you keep saying that. At 12 minutes past 1, a black sedan turned off Delaney into the lot and parked next to a pile of wet mats. Then a second car pulled in behind it. Then a third. Deja Okafor got out of the first car in a Navy team jacket with USA across the back. Renata Cruz got out of the second one. Simone Falk got out of the third with a camera operator and a producer 20 feet behind her. Marcus Odell was standing in the lot with a mop bucket in his hand, and he dropped it. "Coach!" His voice came out wrong. "Coach, come outside!" Jordan came to the door with her sleeves pushed up and wet to the elbows, and she stopped in the frame, and she did not come any further. Deja crossed the lot and stood in front of her. "You didn't call." "No." 3 years, Coach." "No." "Why?" Jordan Mosley opened her mouth and found she did not have the sentence available. Deja Okafor did not wait for it. She put her arms around her old coach in a parking lot, in front of a pile of wet mats. 40 seconds of silence. Then Renata got there. Then Simone. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Deja stepped back and looked at the yellow order taped to the glass. "Okay," she said. "Somebody tell me everything, starting from 7 in the morning." The commissioners arrived at 20 past 2. There were 3 of them. Priya Raman was in front. She had driven 90 minutes on a Saturday because Simone Falk called her at 11, and because Ellis Farrow had filed a request at 11:50, using a phrase she had seen twice in 19 years. Tucker Hale came across the road at 20 past 2, because somebody at the ironclad front desk had seen a news camera in the lot across the street. He did not walk in. He stood in the parking lot and called Declan March. Declan March was in his office on the second floor with a plate of food in front of him. "There's a camera over there." A camera. Chicago plates. And 3 cars I don't know. Hale was looking at the building. "Mr. March, there's people in that gym." "Of course there are people in that gym. She's got 40 parents who love her." March put his fork down. "Tucker, listen to me. If we don't cross that road, tomorrow the story is that we hid. If we do cross it, the story is that we came and explained ourselves like adults. You want me to go in? I want us both to go in." Declan March was not being brave, and he was not being stupid. He had done this in 3 cities, and it had worked in all 3, and the thing that made it work was walking into the room. People do not scream at a man who came to them. He came through the front door of Riverbend Boxing at 25 minutes to 3 in a quarter zip with the crest over the heart, with his hands out of his pockets and a pleasant expression on his face. He got 4 steps in, and then he stopped. 3 commissioners at a folding table, an inspector with a tablet, a camera on a tripod with a light on it. 3 women in national team jackets standing along the wall with their arms folded. 51 people in a room with a yellow fire order taped to the glass. "Mr. March." Priya Raman did not get up. "Sit down, please. Mr. Hale, you as well. Both of you hold licenses in this state, and this is a compliance review. I don't hold a coaching license. You hold a promoter's license and a facility license, and the second one is why you have 11 buildings." She gestured at 2 chairs. "Mrs. Booth, would you come up, please?" Renee Booth came up to the folding table with her phone in both hands. Her hands were shaking so badly that Simone Falk reached over and steadied her wrist without saying anything. "Ma'am, is this your recording?" "Yes." "Did you make it inside this building this morning?" "Yes, ma'am. I was sitting in the 4th row." "Play it, please. All of it." Renee Booth played 2 minutes and 11 seconds of video in a room with 53 people in it. Nobody made a sound. The phone speaker was small and tinny, and it did not matter at all. Everybody in that room heard Tucker Hale's voice come out of it. They heard him say the warm-up floor reverts to the city. They heard a woman say there are 12 children behind me. They heard the sound of a heavy bag hitting the floor, and at 1 minute and 51 seconds they heard him say it, clean and loud enough that the microphone did not distort, that nobody wanted her here, sweetheart. The video ended. "Mr. Hale," Priya Raman said, "under whose authority did you remove property from this building?" "Under a city lease held by Fairwater Holdings." "Did you read the lease?" "I was handed a page." Were you shown a 14-day notice of removal to the tenant in possession? No. Did anyone in this building ask you the legal basis for the removal this morning? Tucker Hale looked up. Ellis Farrow was standing 8 feet away, in a gray windbreaker with a tablet under his arm. Tucker Hale looked at him for the first time all day, and actually saw him. Yes. What did you tell him? I told him to sit down and mind his business. That man is a compliance inspector for this commission, Rahman said. He has been in this building since 7:15 this morning. Declan March turned his head very slowly and looked at the man in the gray windbreaker. Mr. March. Priya Rahman moved on without hurrying. You entered this building at about 5 minutes past 8 this morning. Is that correct? Somewhere around there. Mrs. Booth's recording had stopped by then, so I'd like to ask the room. She looked out at 50 people. Did Mr. March say anything to you this morning? Nobody moved for a second. Then a man stood up in the 5th row. He was in his 40s and he had a 14-year-old daughter sitting next to him, and he had traded a night shift to be there. He told us he wasn't the villain, Devin Greaves said. He said he was the only reason anybody in this zip code would be boxing in 5 years. Did anyone respond to that? No, ma'am. We just looked at him. Declan March said, That is not what I said. 4 other people stood up. One more matter. Priya Rahman turned to Farrow. Inspector, the encumbrance you flagged on the property file. Ellis Farrow walked over and put his tablet down on the folding table in front of Declan March, face up, and stepped back. Mr. March, this is a licensing record from this commission's own archive, attached to the address you have been trying to buy since February. Rahman folded her hands. Read the registrant line out loud, please. Declan March looked down at the screen. Registered mark. Active professional license renewed 40 days ago. Competition record attached. 51 wins, 2 losses. World Championship, lightweight, 2019. Registrant, Josie Mosley. Address of record, 1200 Delaney Street, Gary, Indiana. The same address he had walked into that morning. The name on the faded sign over the door he had walked under twice. Mr. March, out loud please. He did not read it. Sir, Priya Rahman said, do you know whose building you have been trying to take? Jordan Mosley had not said one word during any of it. She was standing at the back of her own gym, with her sleeves still wet to the elbow, and when Priya Rahman asked Declan March whose building he had been trying to take, 53 people turned around and looked at her. She came up the middle of the floor and stopped in front of him. Mr. March. He stood up out of the folding chair because he could not think of anything else to do. This morning, you stood in this room and told 40 parents you weren't the villain. Her voice did not go up at all. You said you were the only reason anybody in this zip code would be boxing in 5 years. My mother ran this building for 19 years before you owned a single square foot of anything. She put 4 girls from Delaney Street on national teams out of a room with no heat. Coach Mosley, I don't think this is the forum. You picked the forum. You picked 8 o'clock in the morning on card day in front of the kids. She let that sit. You could have had this building for nothing. All you had to do was walk across the road one time in 3 months and ask what we needed. You never did. Because you weren't trying to buy a gym, Mr. March. You were trying to buy a corner, and I was the last door on it. Declan March did not answer her. You had one thing wrong, Jordan said. You counted the people in this room this morning. You forgot to count the ones who used to be in it. She stepped back. The first layer came down before anybody left the building. Priya Rahman suspended Tucker Hale's coaching license on the spot, effective immediately, pending a full hearing. She read the provision out loud. Removal of property from a licensed facility during a sanctioned event window without lawful process, in the presence of registered minors. Hale asked how long a full hearing took. For this, she said, about 4 months. You will not be in a corner during any of them. The second layer took 9 days. The commission's referral went to the county prosecutor on Tuesday morning, and the prosecutor's office did what Ellis Farrow had known they would do the moment he saw the parcel map. They did not start with the coach or the mats or the Saturday. They started with the 9 addresses. Every one of those 9 properties had a city action against it within 60 days of sale. Every action carried Reed Bosworth's signature and Fairwater Holdings. When the state finally cracked the registered agent, listed a managing member whose home address was a condominium in Merrillville owned by Reed Bosworth's brother-in-law. Bosworth was indicted in March on 11 counts, including official misconduct and conspiracy to commit fraud on a municipality. Declan March was indicted on the same day. Facility licenses at all 11 ironclad locations were suspended within the week. He fought it for 14 months. His attorneys argued, and they were not wrong, that he had never once signed a city document. What they could not explain was the letter of the 11th of April, $300,000, with a paragraph stating that Mr. March was in a position to be aware of a change in the property's operating status in advance. The letter was written 22 days before the city changed the status. He had put it in writing himself, on his own stationery, and mailed it to a woman who did not throw away paper. He took a plea in the fall, 4 years, and a disgorgement order on all 9 parcels. The third layer was the one that mattered on Delaney Street. Every one of the 9 sales was unwound by court order over the following 18 months. Ray Tolliver did not get his tire shop back. He was 68 and had moved to his daughter's in Kentucky. He got the difference between what he was paid and what the county said it was worth. So did the 7 others. So did Miss Cheryl, who reopened the laundromat with her name back on the window. The warm-up bay at 1200 Delaney Street reverted to the city. It was leased to Riverbend Boxing for $1 a year for 30 years. The resolution passed the council 8-0. By then, nobody in that room wanted their name on the other side of it. Riverbend Boxing was granted full sanction club status on the 4th of June. The fire order was corrected and lifted in 6 days, not 10, because Deja Okafor and Renata Cruz and 11 parents spent a Sunday hauling wet mats out of a doorway. And there was one more thing, and it happened first, before any of the rest of it. On that same Saturday afternoon, with a suspended coach still sitting in a folding chair, Simone Falk asked Priya Raman a question in front of 50 people. "Ma'am, the card was canceled because the certificate got pulled. That's a sanctioned bout problem. It isn't an exhibition problem." Go on. An exhibition under commission supervision doesn't need the same certificate if a commissioner is present, and it goes in the book as unscored. Simone had it in her hand, on her phone, because she had looked it up in the car. There are 3 commissioners standing in this room. Priya Raman took a long moment with that. "It would go in the book," she said. "Unscored. It does not count toward a record." "Ma'am, with respect, he's 17 years and 9 months old. Nothing is going to count toward his record. That door shut this morning at 8:52. Simone glanced across the room at a tall kid standing by the wall with a mop bucket at his feet. "But it goes in the book. His name goes in the state book with a date on it. That's the part that matters when he applies to a program in 18 months. They held it at 6 o'clock that evening. There was no crowd because the fire order was still on the glass and the building could not hold public assembly. So they held it in the parking lot. In the ring, Jordan Mosley had welded herself. 11 men and 3 Olympians carried it out the door and set it up on the asphalt in the rain. Marcus Odell fought 2 rounds of an unscored exhibition against a 19-year-old from Hammond who volunteered on 90 minutes' notice. Deja Okafor worked his corner. Renata Cruz held the bucket. Jordan Mosley stood on the apron and did not say very much. There was nothing left to say that she had not said at 5 in the morning for 6 months. It went into the state book at 8:40 that night. Odell, Marcus J., Riverbend Boxing, Gary, exhibition, unscored, 2 rounds. His great-aunt Billy printed the page and put it in a frame. The sign came down in the spring, and it went back up 2 weeks later. Deja Okafor paid for the restoration and did not tell anybody until it was already done. The letters came back in the original gold. Josie Mosley's gym, over the front door of a converted auto shop on the corner of Delaney and 12th. Underneath it, they hung a second board, smaller, painted by a 16-year-old named Elias Booth. Riverbend Boxing, EST, 2023. The kids found out who their coach was on a Saturday afternoon in front of a news camera, exactly the way she had spent 3 years making sure they would not. It went about the way Jordan feared for 11 days. Then it stopped mattering. A 22-minute segment aired. 1,100 people watched it. And then 4 million did. None of that changed anything about 5 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. She still checked wraps. She still undid Marcus Odell's left one and did it again herself. Tasha Greaves fought on the November card. She lost a split decision in her first bout and cried about it for one afternoon. And then she asked when the next one was. The gym has 31 fighters now. 2 coaches, both paid. There is a shelf by the desk with food on it. Jordan learned something that Saturday about a 14-year-old who had not eaten since Wednesday. She has never let it happen again in her building. Ellis Farrow retired in the fall of the following year. He drives down 4 or 5 times a year and sits in the same folding chair by the wall and makes notes about nothing at all. Renee Booth never made another video in her life. She says she doesn't need to. Marcus Odell turned 18 in November and went into the open division, which is exactly what everyone told him would happen. He lost his first 2. He won the next 6. 18 months later, a page from the state book sat on a table in front of a coach from a university program in Michigan, dated the 3rd of May. Unscored, 2 rounds. Next to it was a segment tape and a phone number for Deja Okafor. He signed in the spring. Full ride. He is studying kinesiology and he calls Billy every Sunday, and he still cannot beat his old coach to the gym in the morning, and he has stopped trying. On a Saturday almost exactly 1 year later, Jordan Mosley unlocked the side door at 10 minutes to 6. The lock still stuck. She still hit it with the heel of her hand twice. She turned the lights on one bank at a time and started the coffee and walked the floor and checked every mat seam with the toe of her shoe. At 20 past 6, Billy came in with a folding table under her arm and told her the chairs were in the back, and Jordan said she knew where the chairs were. By 7:30, there were 90 people in that building, and there was a card at 11, and the North Bay was full of kids jumping rope on mats that belonged to them. Nobody stood in a doorway. Nobody had to. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? 15 men walked into a building at 20 minutes to 8 in the morning. They moved a woman out of her own doorway with one hand. Every single one of them believed the arithmetic. 12 kids and 6 bags against 11 facilities. No lawyer, no money, no leverage, nobody coming. They were so sure of it that they did it in front of 40 parents in broad daylight. The whole point was for the neighborhood to watch. And they were wrong about one thing only, not about the money and not about the lawyer. They were wrong about how many people in this world owe something to a woman who never once asked to be repaid. But here is what stays with me, and it's the part I keep turning over. There were 8 other owners on that block. 8 people got the same city letter, the same lowball number, the same visit. Every one of them signed. Not one had a camera or a crowd or 3 Olympic champions who happened to remember their name. They weren't weaker than she was. They were just alone in the room. So let me ask you directly, because I read every comment. Has somebody ever looked at you, added up what they could see, and decided you were alone? And the harder half of that question. How many people have you walked past and quietly done the same arithmetic about, without ever knowing what you were looking at? Tell me about it below. That conversation is the whole reason a story like this is worth telling. And if this one moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so the next story finds you. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.